out and it's trying to reconnect. Let me make sure that I'm on. Yep, I have perfect Wi-Fi. Oh, here we go.
It says we're live at last. You know, there's always something, you know, and our team did a dry run 40 minutes ago to make sure everything was working with Facebook, and then it didn't work. But we're here. Hello, everyone. Hello. It's Tuesday. It's 4 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, midnight in Dublin, 1 a.m. in London and Italy and most of Europe, 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in Australia, 3 o'clock or something like that in the afternoon in New Zealand, and it's Facebook Live. Hello, hello. And it's the first Tuesday of the month, so it's my most fun Facebook Live with Michelle, Michelle Ross, our Director of Clinical Services. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Dr. Tom. So happy to be here. I look forward to this very much as well.
Oh, yes, it's always fun, and it goes so fast. So we're here to answer your questions today. So give us some shout outs, tell us where you're from, and you can put your questions in, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Now, Michelle, we had a couple of questions from last time that we couldn't get to. Let's start with that.
Okay, well, I'm going to tiptoe into this territory and just come at it from a place of love in my heart. And the fact that I'm working with clients all day, every day, and I know that this can sometimes be hard to hear, but if you do not feel optimal, there is a very strong likelihood that your diet is playing a key role in that. So sometimes we talk about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and expecting different results. So if you're sick and you're eating the same foods over and over and expecting different results, probably a recipe for disaster. And I know that's super hard because the food people put in their mouths is almost like a religion, right? So we can get really connected to our diet of choice. And I find that the vast majority of human nature is just to eat the same 10 foods over and over, right? And
sometimes it's even healthy food, but it's the same thing, you know, over and over again. And sometimes the healthy foods. Some of you may have heard us talk about this before. At Columbia University, they published a study 2 years ago where they sent 804 people, testers, out into the community with testing equipment. And they went to gluten-free restaurants and they ordered off the gluten-free menus, 5,624 different items, 804 testers, right? So that's about 5 or 6 items each. And what did they find? 34% of everything ordered on a gluten-free menu is not gluten-free. 51% of gluten-free pasta is not gluten-free. And 54% of gluten-free pizza is not gluten-free. And I love gluten-free pizza. I'm half Italian, right? So we take the enzymes because I know the science, and so we take the enzymes, either E3 Advanced Plus or Wheat Rescue. They both work really well. And then we'll order our gluten-free pizza, or actually for dinner tonight, we had gluten-free pasta with a really nice meat sauce. But we took a Wheat Rescue beforehand, and I took another Wheat Rescue after because I had a big bowl of pasta. So just to make sure in case there's any contamination there, but eating the best of foods, sometimes you're still going to miss something.
Exactly. So I think it's just really important for all of us to do that personal, like take a moment, step back. Do I feel amazing? Then likely my diet is spot on. And if I don't feel amazing, then I may have to be open-minded enough to be open to shifting it.
Michelle, do you mean there are some people that may have resistance to changing their diet?
Stop it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Of course not.
Of course not. You mean they come to theDr.com and they make an appointment to speak with the Director of Clinical Services, and they've got resistance to the food. Dun, dun, dun.
I think the vast majority of people I work with, like close to 100%, really want to do anything they can to get well.
Yes.
But I think that all of us have our sticking points. And I just know that when anyone says, I've done everything, like, have any of us really done everything? Like those of us that are having sleep issues, have we optimized our blood sugar? Totally dialed it in? Have we optimized our adrenals? Are we making sure that we're not on our phones late at night getting that blue light? Are we up every morning getting daylight exposure? I mean, there's so many things that can become overwhelming. Like we can should all over ourselves, right? I should be doing this. But if we take one at a time, it's the Dr. Tom way, the base hits win the game, right? Yes. But I think one of the things that I see is sometimes people get in this spiral of, I've tried everything, I've done everything.
Right.
And
that's a frustrating place because they have tried everything that they've heard about that made sense to them. They have, and they're feeling the frustration of that. And so I think an accurate statement is, I feel like I've tried everything, but I'm coming to you hoping that there's something I've missed. Right. I think that would be a great way of saying it. I'm going to do a couple of shout outs here. Wanda is the first one on today from Long Island. Hi, Wanda, and she waves. Thank you so much. Laura's here. Hey, Laura. Jillian's here from Cleveland. Jennifer's here from Virginia Beach. Cynthia says, Dr. Tom, would you be able to share your thoughts on diverticular disease, the connection to gluten, and is it reversible? Yes, absolutely. You have an entire new body every 7 years. Every cell in your body regenerates, every single cell. The question is, what kind of cells are you regenerating? Are you regenerating the same diseased cell, inflamed cell, damaged cell, or are you regenerating healthier cells? Now, we all know that your genes don't determine what you get. Your genes determine, for the vast majority of diseases, your genes determine what you're vulnerable to getting. And it's the world of epigenetics, which means around the genes, around the gene, epigenetics, that determines whether that gene expresses itself or not. So if you have a gene to be vulnerable to diverticular diseases, then it's what's happening around that gene that either turns that gene up to express itself a lot more or dims that gene down so that it doesn't express itself so much. And that is the key. Some of you have heard us talk about Professor Fasano's 5 pillars in the development of chronic inflammatory diseases, any itis, diverticulitis, diverticular diseases. There's 5 pillars: the genetics that make you vulnerable, the environmental triggers that turn that gene up or down. Those environmental triggers alter the microbiome, so you get an inflammatory microbiome, which creates intestinal permeability. And then because of the intestinal permeability, the leaky gut, molecules get through into the bloodstream, and your immune system, trying to protect you from whatever got in there, starts fighting that, so you get systemic inflammation. Those are the 5 pillars. And the answer is yes, absolutely, you can turn around diverticular diseases. The question is it gasoline or kerosene? What is the environmental triggers that are setting off the inflammation in the gut? Michelle, do you want to continue on that one?
That's like so perfect there. I think we all need to remember the human body has the most amazing capacity to heal. Like Dr. Tom says, we've got to find those root causes for each person. There can be multiple different triggers for diverticulitis. And you just think about these little pockets in the intestines that are storing all that bacteria and junk and garbage and festering and destroying your health, right? So it's healing the gut and getting all that junk out of there and preventing it from coming back. There may always be that weak link, right? Where you're vulnerable to that. I think sometimes people are like, I'm going to white knuckle it through 30 days. And then I'm going to go back to my old lifestyle of eating Cheetos, and probably can't do that. Right. But
Right.
absolutely, the gut can heal. It's amazing to see it happen.
So for people who don't know what diverticular disease is, your large intestine comes up on the right side, across under the ribs, and down on the left side. And it's a tube, and the tube is made of these muscles. And if you know, it's kind of like this, muscles on each side, on all the way around. And the muscles contract together to push the waste to go out. That's called peristalsis. So these two muscles contract, and then the muscles down below lower contract, and the next one contract, and the brain sends a message for all that to occur. They work in unison. Diverticular disease is when the muscles have spasmed up a little bit, so you get these pockets. You don't get that nice shape to the muscle anymore, and shape as it's going down, but rather you get this weird little bulge, almost like squeezing a water balloon, and something comes out between your fingers. Ah, perfect. Thanks, Michelle. And let's see if we can get a drawing there or a picture of diverticuli. Yeah, there they go. That's what they look like. And they can be pretty large or pretty small. And these pockets, the waste can accumulate in the pocket. And if it accumulates in the pockets, then it can decay and go kind of rancid and cause inflammation in the area. And so first you have diverticulosis, which means you've got these balloon balls, like, you know, water balloons sticking out from the muscles. And then as the material decays in there and you get inflamed, you get diverticulitis, means you've got an itis, whether it's arthritis, conjunctivitis, bursitis. Itises mean inflammation, so this is diverticular itis, that the water balloon has now gotten inflamed. So the first thing we have to do is to reduce the amount of inflammation. And drugs won't do that if we keep doing the same thing that we've always been doing. So you have to stop throwing gasoline on the fire, get the bowels working better, and then the inflammation calms down. And the result is you put the diverticulitis into remission. For people who have diverticular disease, they're going to have it probably the rest of your life. You're not going to change that. So you need to learn, what are the habits I need to develop to have great bowel movements all the time? And what are the triggers that set me off when I don't have great bowel movements? And once you learn that, you can live symptom-free with diverticular disease, right? It takes a while to learn all of that, but that's the journey. Alice says hello from Virginia. Marilla says hello from Hollywood, Florida. So happy to be here. Thanks, Marilla. Maria says, what's your opinion on carnivore diet for people with autoimmune disease? Michelle, do you want to start with that one?
Absolutely. So all of these therapeutic diets can be just that. They can be therapeutic, and we only want to do them long enough to get the therapeutic results. And then ideally, we want to go back to eating an all-inclusive diet. So the carnivore diet is basically only eating meat, and it can, for some people, dramatically reduce inflammation. I also know that I've talked to the doctors at BiomeFX, Microbiome Labs stool test, and they say the worst microbiomes are their carnivore diet patients. So there's some practitioners that are big on carnivore diet for autoimmune disease, and it can be, you know, with a lot of these things, like the vegan diet, I've seen people just dramatically reduce inflammation and feel amazing. And then a couple months in, couple years in, it's different for everyone. We start to see deficiencies, right? And sometimes we can see our vegan clients are the unhealthiest. Autoimmune diet, I've seen it be amazing and transformative, right? But we have to remember that what feeds the microbiome is plant-based foods, right? And that's what our beneficial flora in our gut, that's its favorite food. And so if we completely pull that all out, yes, I mean, if somebody has small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and inflammatory diseases, it can put the fire out, but ultimately there can be long-term consequences.
Really great answer. Thank you. Cynthia's here from Ottawa, Ontario. Melissa says hi from Virginia. And Cynthia's here from Denver. Jennifer says, could you share any insights on the V blah, 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 shedding? Yes. So we're avoiding the V word here. Viruses shed inside the cell. They don't shed in the bloodstream. They have to get inside the cell. This particular threat we have right now binds onto a receptor called the ACE2 receptor, and that's how it gets inside the cell. We know the science is really clear that if you have a high polyphenol diet, it inhibits the virus from getting into the ACE2 receptor. The virus can't open the door of the ACE2 receptor to get inside the cell. It inhibited it dramatically. The higher the polyphenol diet, the better. And Michelle, what is a polyphenol diet?
My favorite topics, Dr. Tom, plant-based foods, fiber, herbs and spices. We should be throwing those around like confetti on our food. I have this great little herb garden, and I'll go out and just take little bits of basil and oregano and parsley. And if you chop it up into your salad, it creates so much flavor. It's like this burst of flavor in your mouth. And I just like visualize it feeding beneficial flora in my gut. Coffee is high in polyphenols, but you want to get a mold-free, organic, one that's been tested. Purity, I think, is using my favorite right now out there in the.
Purity is great, and brain bean also.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, I'll tell you about it.
Love learning new things.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like dark colored foods, so blueberries and I was in a food co-op yesterday, and I was just looking at these sugar snap peas that had purple around the edges. So anything that has purple or blue, purple cabbage, purple kale is going to be much higher in polyphenols. So think vegetables and fruit. And there's some great lists out there on the internet. If you Google, there's a really great research paper that maybe we could put the link to that kind of lists everything in order of the highest polyphenol foods to the lowest, but it's plant-based food. So a carnivore diet, while therapeutic, is going to be void of polyphenols.
Right, there's no polyphenols, or very little polyphenols. So the polyphenols fill up the ACE2 receptor so the virus can't get in and open the doorknob to get inside the cell. That's one aspect. The second is zinc inside the cell. So your intracellular zinc inhibits viral shedding. And that's a primary mechanism behind how quinine works with malaria, is that it's a zinc ionophore. It carries zinc inside the cell, so the virus can't shed. And so taking zinc is important, but zinc in the bloodstream does not necessarily mean zinc gets inside your cells. It's hard to get it inside the cell. And it's one of those minerals that we've identified there are a number of escorts. Zinc is an escort service to zinc requires an escort service to get inside the cell. And what are some of the zinc escorts, which are called ionophores? That's the geek term for an escort. The zinc ionophores, the natural ones, the highest is quercetin. Quercetin is in citrus fruit, and you can get supplements of quercetin. So it's a good idea to take a quercetin capsule with zinc, because it'll just help get the zinc inside the cell, and the viruses can't shed very much in there. The other, of course, is quinine. And I tell the story about that, about quinine. And It was the British soldiers in the 1800s in India that to prevent them from getting malaria, the British learned about the fever tree. And you take the bark of the fever tree and you make a tea out of it and you drink it. And it's really bitter tasting, but the result is their soldiers don't get malaria. And the quinine that's in the bark of the fever tree is really, really bitter tasting. So the soldiers got permission to mix the quinine with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of fruit juice or fruit flavored water. That's where the song came from. Just a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. That's exactly where it came from, was the British soldiers wanted the sugar with the quinine to take medicine down. And then they got permission to add a teaspoon of gin to it, and thus was born the gin and tonic. So it's a zinc ionophore. The gin and tonic is a zinc ionophore because the tonic water, which is the bitter of quinine, plus a little fruit juice and plus a little sugar and a little water, that's tonic water. That's where tonic water came from, is a powerful zinc ionophore. So every day now, Marzi and I have a little bit of tonic water. Not that it's going to prevent us from getting sick, but it's going to help to escort zinc inside the cell. So if and when we're exposed to the virus, if it can get inside the cell, there's not a friendly environment there. There's lots of zinc, and so it won't be able to shed. That's the concept behind why some doctors talk about tonic water as being helpful right now. That's where it all comes from. Now, you have to be careful because a lot of the commercial tonic waters are just chemical garbage. They don't even use quinine anymore. They use chemicals to mimic the taste. And so you want to make sure you read the label of the tonic water that it's got quinine in it. Another concern is that it's so bitter tasting, most of the companies add a lot of sugar to it. And it's not healthy to be drinking something like that every day. Well, the company called Fever Tree, just like the tree in India that the quinine comes from, the company's called Fever Tree. They've got 5 different tonic waters. One of them is called India, the flavor of India, but then one of them is called India Light, and it has half the sugar. So I order a case of Fever Tree India Light tonic water. So we've got it, and we just have a little every day. They're small bottles, and we split 1 bottle a day. I didn't bring one in here with me now, but I'll fill it with ice, put a slice of lime in there, half of the little bottle of tonic water, and then fill it up with water. And we just sip it. And it's going to help us this much. For some people, it might help this much if they have a zinc deficiency, right? So those are the things that I can suggest to you about protecting yourself from the shedding process. Kat says,
I can't wait till they make a little clip of that because I want to share that with people. So that was really helpful. I was taking notes. Thank you.
Great. Kat says, silly question, but could my mineral salt deodorant be causing just one ankle to swell? No. It can be a trigger, but there's something in your body that's causing one ankle to swell. There's something in your lymphatic system, some blockage in your lymphatics if you're developing edema in just one ankle. Or if you had an old injury on that leg, there's something not quite working right in the mechanics of the leg. Those are the 2 places that I would look, Kat, for that. Marilla says, I've been having eye twitch happening more often. Michelle?
Can be a B vitamin deficiency, can be a magnesium deficiency. Figure out which deficiency. It's torture. And there's a reason. It's typically a nutrient deficiency.
Agreed.
It can be stress, right?
Agreed.
Dr. Tom, stress. So just check in and make sure that you are managing stress.
Excess of stress hormones depletes you of your nutrients. Your body has to break down those stress hormones. So if there's a stressful situation that you're living under and you try to keep it under control, it may be getting the better of you. It may be. Shanquila asks, how do you recommend a nebulizer to rinse out mold from sinuses? Also, do you have any diet tips if dealing with ochratoxin A?
Yeah, nebulizers typically are prescription only. So I don't know. I know people snort Tide Pods, so I don't know what people were doing with nebulizers, but they got pulled for prescription only. And they can be incredibly helpful, right? I've seen people.
Yeah, I don't know how you rinse out with the nebulizer. I don't know how you do that. I use a neti pot to rinse out sinus cavities. So a neti pot, you can get them online. Just type in neti, N-E-T-T-I. Whole Foods carries them. A lot of health food stores carry them. They're shaped like Aladdin's lamp, and you put water in and maybe some sea salt, and you lean over the sink and you put the nose of the Aladdin's lamp in one nostril, and the water will run out the other nostril. And if you've not done it before, it takes a little getting used to, but once you've gotten used to it, you feel, and then, so you do that for about 5 seconds, the water's running out, you take it out and blow it out, and then you do the other side. And that's how I recommend rinsing out your nasal cavity. And what you put in the water can be very helpful. So you can use an antibacterial, an antifungal, and to rinse your cavities out with that. I've not heard of rinsing out with the nebulizer. I'm not sure.
No, the nebulizer is just a different mechanism to get nutrients in. So if somebody's not absorbing biocidin well in their gut and they're inhaling it and getting into the lungs that way, it's just a different delivery system. But you're right, it's not for rinsing things out of the sinuses. It's for getting ingredients directly to the sinuses and lungs, and then a different absorption process than through the gut.
And do you have any diet tips if dealing with ochratoxin A?
Don't feed it. So be really careful with sugars, because sugars feed it. Peanuts are full of aflatoxins, a type of mold. In fact, ochratoxin A can be coming 100% from diet. I mean, there's also times it can be coming from, other environmental triggers like a sick building. But I've seen people just shifting their diet really reduce that marker. So, there's controversy about mushrooms because medicinal mushrooms don't seem to drive mold like shiitake versus table mushrooms. But for some people, any type of fungal type food, cheeses, which is mold, right? But yeah, there's a great list online of things that feed molds that can be really helpful.
Sarah's here from Tennessee. Hello, Sarah. Tanuja is here from Sydney, Australia. Hello, Tanuja. Thanks for being here. Tell us what time it is, please. I'd like to know what time it is there. Bob was replying to Wanda and said hello. Bob, are you dating here on our Facebook Live? It's good. Tell us how it goes. Good luck on that one, man. Dawn's here. Dawn says, I'm half Italian too. Gluten-free is difficult. It is. It is. We did a trip a couple days ago to take our baby boy to the pediatrician. So we went to another town, did an overnight there, and a beach town, and they've got a famous bakery there. And our friends told us they've got good gluten-free things. So as we're driving out of town, I go in there and it's Sunday morning. Oh, it was 2 days ago, Sunday morning, very busy. People are having breakfast and all that. And by the time we got there, though, most of the gluten-free products were gone. There were a couple things they had. I bought them for our drive back home, and they were tasty. But as I got in the car, I said, I miss almond croissants. I just really miss them. It's the price you pay to be healthier. And so, yes, Dawn, it is difficult at times. But as you move forward in learning more food selections and you get healthier and younger and stronger, it's a small price to pay. And then if you slip and you go back, and the next day you feel terrible, and not just guilty terrible, but physically terrible. And then, you know, it's, I used to tell the story, 8 years. It took me 8 years to, Michelle knows, took me 8 years to give up Christmas cookies, because we'd go home to my parents for Christmas every year from Chicago with the kids. And my mother would make this variety of cookies that I grew up on, and little pieces of cheesecake with the canned cherry topping from the red dye and all the garbage stuff that I grew up on. But I'd look at that and I'd take a bite of one. Well, I'll just have a bite of one. And within a couple of days, I'd eaten 4 or 5 a day, right? It took me 8 years before I stopped eating Christmas cookies. So Dawn, you're not alone in recognizing the challenge in shifting your eating style.
But there's multiple challenges. There's the challenge of dealing with the symptoms, and there's the challenge of giving up the food. Like, we all just have to see what our highest value is. Like,
Yes.
if your highest value is health, then that challenge really becomes minimal. And once you, like you said, Dr. Tom, once you start to feel vibrant and healthy, it's so worth it that you wouldn't even go back. If there was a pill or some magic wand to fix it, it's like, it's not even worth it anymore.
Agreed, agreed. Alice asked the question, where to get Wheat Rescue, your product? Alice, I just completed a video yesterday that'll be on our site soon that talks about when do you use Wheat Rescue, when do you use E3 Advanced Plus, and my team will put a link up there for Wheat Rescue. It's on our website now. Thank you, Michelle, for that. And Wanda says, laughing out loud. Okay, Wanda, that's great. Lynn Trox here. Hi, Dr. T and Michelle. Lynn's in Arizona. Oh, I've got my cheerleaders here with me. I'm going to show everybody my, so let me just take the power off so I can turn this around. And you can see there's my team.
He's shadowed.
There he
Gio, we
is.
can't see you.
There's
Come
that little
closer.
boy. Oh, hang on. Let me get the door open. There we go. Oh, you're going to come around? Okay. They'll come around, and now I can turn the light back on.
We just
No.
saw a shadow of them.
Oh, it's just a shadow? Okay. Oh, well, that doesn't work, does it?
Hi, Marcy.
Hi, honey.
Let's see. There we go. Let's see if we've got it. Here's the front.
Hi, Gio. Hi, sweet baby. Hi. Were you swimming?
Yeah.
He was swimming.
Yes.
Yes.
With these thunder thighs. Look at these thunder thighs on this boy. Oh, yes.
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 Hi, sweet baby.
Family Facebook Live.
Yes. Yeah.
Hi, you love his live.
Oh, smile.
He is the
Oh,
big one.
yes. Look at that double chin. That's just a healthy little boy. Yes. Hi there. Hi there. I'll get back to you. All right, I've got to go back to our questions here.
Okay.
Such a
Nice,
happy
everybody.
baby.
Oh, we got lots of hearts. Oh, thank you so much for all the hearts. That's really nice.
He's a happy baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Al says, hi, what is a muscle spasm in the neck and what can you do to help this? Thank you. Usually a muscle spasm in the neck is caused by thank you for all the hearts. That's really beautiful to see. Yeah, and Marzi and I feel that every day. We wake up to this every morning and just sing to him every morning, and he just smiles and laughs, and it's just beautiful. It's really quite sweet. That's what gets you younger in life, right? Is that kind of love and expression of love. If you're having muscle spasms in your neck, you're best served by seeing a chiropractor. And who do you see? Ask your friends who see chiropractors. Are they happy? Have they found one that they really like? And that's the best recommendation, is from someone that you trust and what their experience is. Peggy says, hello from the capital region of New York. My new base hit is matcha green tea. Oh, way to go. Michelle, do you want to comment on matcha?
There's so many benefits to matcha. So yeah, well done.
Yeah. Chris says, how do you heal from the microvilli blunting? Michelle?
Well, finding the root cause. So what causes the villus atrophy or the damage to the gut microbiome? And I like to start with the lowest hanging fruit. Like we know without a doubt that gluten causes microvilli blunting. LPS can be linked to that. There can be cross-reactive foods and other foods, but it can be different for everyone. But there can be alcohol, right? So it's just really finding what it is for you that's damaging your gut microbiome.
So for people who don't know what blunting is, your intestines are a tube, 20, 25 feet long. The inside of the tube is lined with shag carpeting. When you have excess inflammation in your gut, you wear down the shag carpeting and the shag wears down and eventually becomes Berber. And when that wearing down occurs, Michelle, you're great with the photos. You're just whipping them right out there. Way to go.
I'm a visual learner. I love the pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. So blunting is when the shags are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that occurs because of the inflammation. So what do? Well, stop throwing gasoline on the fire. Well, what does that mean? You have to find out where the inflammation's coming from. And as Michelle talks about, the low-hanging fruit, the most obvious thing in the literature is a sensitivity to wheat. Now, people say, well, I went to my doctor and he tested me for celiac. I don't have celiac. That's not the test to do. That there are other tests that are much more comprehensive, the wheat zoomer. And we'll put the link here for the wheat zoomer. It is the most comprehensive test on the planet. I travel the world, I lecture all over, and before my scheduled time to talk, I'll go down to the vendors area and look and see who are the vendors and what's out there in Germany and Portugal and London. And I always go to the labs and I look at their catalogs to see what kind of tests they're doing. And there's no one in the world that has a test that comes anywhere near the comprehensiveness of the wheat zoomer. So any doctor that doesn't recommend a thorough test to screen for a wheat-related disorder, not just celiac, but a wheat-related disorder, with so much literature out there now, it's almost malpractice that they're not guiding you to find out, because it's the low-hanging fruit. That's the most common cause.
And let's just take 2 minutes to just give people a visual on that. Okay, so here's the celiac markers right here. Okay, there's 6 of them. And that they're only testing these 4 in conventional medicine. And then we have the most comprehensive intestinal permeability to find out if you've got that villus atrophy, to find out if there's tears in your gut. But all of these now are associated with wheat and gluten. And these are not included when you're testing for only those celiac markers.
Right.
And most people have issues in this area. It's not often I see the celiac markers borderline a lot, but I don't see them elevated as often as I see lots going on these 2 pages. That's a lot of markers. It's such a valuable test.
Marvelous, marvelous. Grace asked the question, hi, Dr. Tom, which naturopathic doctor in California can you recommend to help my son in any intervention there is for his peripheral neuropathy? That means numbness and tingling in the arms, legs, hands, and feet. He just changed his diet to partly vegan and seafood as well as gluten-free. Well, let's talk about peripheral neuropathies for a moment. A most common cause of peripheral neuropathies is a sensitivity to wheat. And there's a lot of literature that talks about the antibodies that you test for when you're looking for this, and the markers that you look for are included in, some of them are included in the wheat zoomer, the rest of them are included in the neural zoomer plus. So you have to do 2 tests, 1 blood draw, but 2 tests. Actually, even a finger prick. Now you can do it with a finger prick for those 2 tests. And that will tell you if he has the sensitivity to wheat, which is a very common trigger for peripheral neuropathies. 22% of celiacs have peripheral neuropathies. 100% of the celiacs with peripheral neuropathies have elevated antibodies to gangliosides, every one of them. So that's why you do the NeuroZoomer Plus and you do the Wheat Zoomer to see if your son falls into that category. Now, I don't know which doctors, naturopathic doctors in California, are familiar with that. What I would suggest, you might want to get the test done. If it comes back positive, then call the lab if you want. No, actually, I'd work with Michelle. But if you want a naturopathic doctor, then call the lab and say, hi, who are your naturopathic doctors who are really well versed in how to interpret these tests? Because the tests are difficult to understand. You know, the NeuroZoomer Plus has 84, is it? No, 48 markers of inflammation in the brain. And some of them doctors have never heard of before. And they once they do one test, and wow, I need to learn more about this. And then they'll study a little bit, and the next test they'll know more, the next test they know more. Within about 6 months, they've got it down. But that's where I would start with peripheral neuropathies. I'm not worried about the nerves themselves, that it's important, but I'm not focused on the nerves themselves. I'm focused on why is there inflammation to those nerves? Because you're not going to stop a peripheral neuropathy by treating the symptoms. They'll feel better, but you have to address where is it coming from. That's the Wheat Zoomer and the NeuroZoomer Plus. Michelle, anything you want to add to that one?
I concur. The only other thing would be blood sugar dysregulation. You know, there can be blood sugar dysregulation associated with peripheral neuropathy. So doing fasting glucose, hemoglobin A1C, glycomark, fasting insulin, C-peptide, just get a full panel for blood sugar and see if your blood sugar is balanced.
Mm-hmm.
You're in that pre-diabetes range, that could be the trigger. But I would absolutely, if I had peripheral neuropathy, I would do a Wheat Zoomer and NeuroZoomer tomorrow.
NeuroZoomer Plus.
Plus, yes, thank you. NeuroZoomer Plus.
Yeah, right away. Shanquila asked the question, on my mycotox GPL test, got ochratoxin A, 17 others were good. Lab thinks environmental exposure, doc thinks food from grain consumption. What is your insight? Thank you. Well, that's really good. Michelle, do you want to start with that one?
Absolutely. I mean, grains, the way they're stored, are notoriously moldy. So it's worth really doing one of those elimination diets where you pull out all the moldiest foods and you do lots and lots of vegetables and the healthiest, qualitiest protein that you can find. And, you know, there's nuts that are moldy. So it's just really kind of like creating this environment that's really low mold. And then you trial foods in. And when symptoms come back, then maybe that food isn't the best for you right now.
And when you're going on this mold vulnerable food elimination diet, you have to do it for at least 2 to 3 months because the antibodies live about 2 months. And so you're going to retest after you've done this eating profile for a couple, 3 months. So do it for that length of time so that when you recheck, the levels have come down. Now, there's also a difference between, there's 2 tests that we recommend on our website. One is the antibodies to mold, and the other is the test that you've already done from Great Plains that looks at the metabolite itself, the ochratoxin itself. So you have ochratoxin, but is your immune system fighting it? Which means then it's more systemic. So you might want to consider doing the antibody test also. Judy says hello from Australia. Hello, Judy. What time is it there? Let us know, please. Jennifer says recommendation for a chiropractor in the Virginia Beach area. I've never been to Virginia Beach. Where would I go to find a good chiropractor? It depends on what your condition is. If it's a mechanical condition, I would look in two different areas. There's a group called the Motion Palpation Institute. And I believe they have a certification process. So if a doctor has gone through the certification at the Motion Palpation Institute, they're rational, sharp doctors. And the other is there's a type of treatment for the spine called COX, C-O-X, flexion distraction. And someone who's certified in COX flexion distraction can be an excellent chiropractor to have as part of your healthcare team. So certification in COX or in motion palpation would be some general principles to screen for what would likely be very competent doctors.
You could also go to ifm.org, click on this little turquoise button, find a practitioner. Let's see, what would be a zip code? What was your zip code in Chicago? Do you remember?
Chicago would be 62, oh, come on now.
I was looking here.
60201, 60201.
60201, okay, 60201. And then I like to bring this down to maybe 25 miles and hit find. And then you'll see a list of all the certified practitioners and look for.
Good point.
So there's MD, DO. Here's a chiropractor right here. Click on her, read about her, see if she's still doing adjustments. Here's another one right here, another. So this would be another great place to find a
Really
chiropractor.
good point. Really good point. Alice asks, a pill a day or with each meal? And if you're referring to E3 and Wheat Rescue, it's with each meal. They're not nutrition oriented, a little bit, but they're more digestive assistance related. So they're going to help you break down any inadvertent exposures to wheat that you may have. Al asks a question, is it possible to heal gut? Is super stressed doc thinks emotional work should come last, but I'm not so sure.
Ooh, listen to your gut on this one. Your gut is leading you in the right direction. Absolutely, you've got to. I was just talking to somebody about that today. We were looking at the Living Matrix and their timeline, and it's so amazing to me, the gift of that timeline, because you're able to go back and see what time period in your life there was a trigger, and then you'll see this, like the straw that brings the camel's back, and there'll be this cascade of symptoms that goes up, and then things kind of calm down, and then there'll be another trigger. And if you don't go back to that time period and say, what was happening there? Was I in a car accident? Did I go through a horrible breakup? Did I have a pregnancy? That's a beautiful thing, but it's also a stressful thing to the body, right? And a lot of those have some emotional component. Was there something traumatic that happened? If we don't go back and resolve that, then we're treading water.
Yeah.
Right? We can't out supplement, we can't out nutrition that. We have to go back. We get to go back and address that.
Teresa says, have MS, hypothyroid, Raynaud's, VAD, and only one kidney because of cancer. Besides having difficulty with balance and fatigue mostly, really want to work on healing my MS. Do you have any suggestions? MSG gastroenterology doctor couldn't find wheat Zoomer test. Is your site B only place to find the place? Eat. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. The MSG gastroenterology doctor, I think you mean your gastroenterologist, couldn't find the wheat Zoomer test. Well, if you Google wheat Zoomer, you'll find it really easily. You also can order it on our website if you want to. But it's better if your doctor opens an account with the lab and starts learning more about these tests himself. So it's not difficult to order the test one way or another. Is your site the only place to find the place eat? And I think you mean to find the test. And I don't know if other sites are offering the test or not.
Vibrant Wellness is the company that your doctor needs to open an account with. Anyone that is has a license and an NPI number can order that test. It's just it's a learning curve, right? So somebody who learns how to do surgery, that's a learning curve and it takes years. We can't expect somebody just to overnight know how to interpret the test. It takes time. So it would be awesome if your doctor would be willing to invest that time. But again, be open to the fact that maybe that's not their top priority. Would that be safe to say, Dr. Tom? I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Stephanie says, how's the baby, Dr. Tom? Oh, because we went to the pediatrician? Oh, thank you. He's off the charts. He's above the curve in his height and in his weight for 4 months old. And he said, your son will be between 6 foot and 6'6". And I said, oh, okay, that's great. Glad to hear it. And he says he is very alert. I think the word he used was alert. And yes, he is. And he's doing fabulous. Thank you for asking. Let's see. Florence says.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I was going to do Luann's, but go for Florence.
Okay. I have 3 autoimmune conditions, was doing so well reversing my MS, thanks to learning from you, your books too, then got sepsis after almost a year later, dealing with lots of pain, contracted COVID while at the nursing rehab. Beat both of those except long-term effects, taking all supplements before I came here, probably why I finally succumbed to COVID. Any suggestions about why all the pain and long-term after effects of both?
LPS antibodies still lingering. If she had full-blown sepsis, there's probably still this brewing infection in your bloodstream.
Yeah, it's inconsistent that you had 3 autoimmune conditions and you were feeling so much better, and then all of a sudden you get sepsis. Sepsis doesn't come out of the blue. That something has to be feeding it. Sepsis is an accumulation of LPS in your body, usually over many, many years, usually. And LPS comes through the leaky gut. So Florence, if you've been following our recommendations, you've been addressing some of these things, great. But you either were missing something or you had a little treat on the side that you were doing regularly, you know, that kept the permeability and allowed the LPS to sneak in, maybe. But there had to be a trigger that set you up for sepsis. Michelle, anything else you want to add to that one?
I just keep thinking the intestinal permeability panel on the wheat sumer, right? Here's an example of a pre-test where somebody was at 61 and they brought it down into a healthy range. That would be my first go-to if there was a history of sepsis. I'd want to know if it was still brewing in the body.
What was the next one that you were about to read?
Oh, Luann says constipation is a problem. I'm feeling the frustration for sure. Drink a lot of water, eat fiber, and am hypothyroid. Seems it's slow going. What else can I do? Lots of family has issue.
Drinking lots of water, good. So it's almost always a primary contributor is your microbiome. There's something out of balance in the microbiome. And Michelle, if they want to find out what's out of balance, how would they do that?
I highly recommend Gut Sumer. That test is so robust, has so much information. And I find so many people have methane dominant SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And that is so connected with constipation. So, you know, it gets thrown out there. You have irritable bowel syndrome. Well, why is it irritable? So really going in there and finding out what's going on. I mean, there's so many markers on that test that can be linked to this constipation. I think making sure that your body is in parasympathetic or a state of calm as often as possible, working on the vagus nerve. There's things you can do like aggressive gargling, using a tongue depressor to get that gag reflex, laughing. Laughter is the best medicine, meditation, breathing exercises, any of those things, because the vagus nerve connects the brain and the gut, and it's often damaged and impaired with constipation. So
Right.
but you can use Band-Aids, right? But it's always important to get to the root cause. And it's great that you're drinking plenty of water, but it doesn't seem to be enough. There's something else going on. So great question.
Amal says, listening to you both while sipping my Fever Tree Indian light tonic water over ice. Thanks for all the tips. Way to go, way to go. That's great. Todd asks, can eating pickles help with healing the gut? The answer is yes, if the pickles are fermented. Then you're doing fermented foods, not just vinegar pickles. There's nothing wrong with vinegared pickles, but healing the gut with inoculating with fermented food, you're bringing in more of the good bacteria that's supposed to be there. So yes, that can help.
Yeah, look for foods that are fermented with salt, like a sea salt, and not the vinegar, and that it's sizzles when you open the top, and it's found in the refrigerator section. So anything that's on the shelf is kind of dead. So you want it to have that active live culture for the pickles.
Cynthia asks, how long would you recommend keto with intermittent fasting for Hashimoto's and diabetes?
As long as you need to therapeutically do it, and make sure. So we throw out these terms like keto, and people think, okay, I'm eating bacon and cheese and I'm keto. But there can be modified keto diets that still help us to get into a state of ketosis, but we still have a lot of vegetables. So, you know, it's hard to vegan. You could eat potato chips and drink Diet Coke and be vegan, right? So it's really optimizing your keto diet to make sure that your diabetes markers are turning in the right direction that you want to go, and your microbiome is healing.
Exactly right. You follow the biomarkers. You have to start with biomarkers, indicators of what's out of balance and how far out of balance, and you follow the biomarkers. That's how you determine if a protocol is working to arrest and reverse a degenerative disease. Not just if you feel better, what are the biomarkers saying? That can make a huge difference. Gwendolyn says, hello from New Zealand. Gwendolyn, what time is it? Send us a message as to what time it is, please. Dolores says, I've tried to get off proton pump inhibitors, but my acid reflux is just too bad. What can I do? Thanks. Well, first thing, make sure to do a Heliobacter test. You test for the bacteria that causes ulcers, most common cause of ulcers. That's the first thing. And if that's not the case, then you just do the whole functional medicine dive. You know, you look to see. And we always start with the wheat zoomer. And for this kind of a condition, we'd also do a gut zoomer. So you do a wheat zoomer and a gut zoomer to see. And there may be other foods like lectins or dairy or some others that can be triggering that inflammation in your stomach and your esophagus. Could be. But I'd start with the big one first, and that's a Heliobacter infection. Michelle, anything you want to add to that?
That's spot on. I mean, such a connection with gluten, but there's the chiropractic adjustment where they pull down the sphincter. It's super painful, but sometimes that gets stuck open.
Right.
So a chiropractic appointment to talk to the chiropractor about that can make all the difference for some people.
I've had many, many patients over the years that made the world of difference. And they were off their proton pump inhibitors in 2 days after that. Emily asks, what do you suggest for Candida chronic imbalance?
Well, don't feed it. the sugar cravings, right? That's what Candida thrives on to stay alive. And then figuring it out why it was that you were susceptible to that. Was it living in a moldy environment? Is it your diet? And then working to create an environment in your body that doesn't allow Candida to thrive.
Right, right. Create the environment, which is the microbiome. Work on the microbiome. Rebuild a healthier, diverse microbiome. Antoinette says hello from coastal Maine. Vicky is here. Carolyn East. About Todd. So we already did Todd. Okay, well, I think, and it's 6:09 here, 6:05. Yeah, well, we started a couple minutes late, so we're ending a couple minutes late. And it's like we just started. You know, it goes so fast.
Yes.
It always does. Always does. Well, listen, everyone. We'll be back. Michelle will be back next month, the first Tuesday of every month. I'll be back next week. Please like this, you know, and give us a thumbs up and all of that, because, well, I feel good when I know that we're interacting with you. And Facebook feels good, I guess, when you share this link with your friends, that the more shares there are, the more announcements Facebook allows that we're doing live, Dr. Tom and Michelle Facebook Live. So please take a moment and just like this and share with a friend if you would do that. And with that, I'll say, Michelle, thanks very much. It's always so much fun to do this.
So much fun. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for being here, for honoring us with your time and asking awesome questions.
Thank you all very much. See you next week.